In occupied France, helping a Jew was punishable by law, not by rumor, not by warning, by law. The penalty could be prison, it could be deportation, it could be death. Yet in one remote mountain village, almost every family chose to break that law. Not once, not quietly, but systematically, for years. The SS searched this village, the Vichy police interrogated its leaders, the Gestapo arrested its pastor. And still, thousands survived. This is not a story about weapons. There are no battles here, no gunfire. This is a story about deception, about discipline, and about a community that learned how to resist without ever appearing to resist at all. This is the true story of Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. In May 1940, the German army crossed into France. Within weeks, one of Europe's strongest military powers collapsed. Paris fell, the French government fled, an armistice was signed. France was divided. The north was occupied directly by German forces. The south was placed under a new regime, Vichy France. Officially neutral, in practice, cooperative. Vichy authorities pledged to maintain order, they promised efficiency, and they promised compliance. That compliance soon took the form of laws. Jews were identified, registered, excluded from professions. By 1941, foreign Jews were being interned. By 1942, deportations had begun. Trains left French soil for the east, Auschwitz, Sobibor, unknown destinations at the time. Most citizens did not know exactly where those trains went, but they understood enough. Le Chambon-sur-Lignon lies in south-central France on a high plateau in the Massif Central. It is not on a major road, there is no railway hub, no industry. In winter, snow isolates the region. In the 1940s, it was poorer still. Most families lived from small farms, from livestock, from land that gave little and demanded much. But there was one defining characteristic that set this village apart. Le Chambon was Protestant, in a country that had persecuted Protestants for centuries. The people here were descendants of Huguenots, families who had once hidden their faith, their children, and their names to survive. They remembered secrecy, they remembered flight, they remembered what it meant to be hunted by the state. This memory did not live in books, it lived in sermons, in family stories, in quiet understanding. At the center of the village stood Pastor André Trucmé. Tall, soft-spoken, a committed pacifist. He had served as a medic during the First World War, he had seen violence up close, and he had rejected it completely. But Trucmé did not believe pacifism meant obedience. In June 1940, shortly after France's surrender, he addressed his congregation. He did not call for rebellion, he did not speak of Germany. He spoke of conscience. We shall resist whenever our adversaries demand obedience contrary to the orders of the gospel. It was not a political statement, it was a moral one. And in Vichy France, that distinction did not matter. They arrived quietly. At first, only a few. A teenage boy sent away by parents who knew what was coming. A woman released from an internment camp with nowhere else to go. Children escorted by aid organizations and left behind. The villagers did not ask who sent them. They only asked one question: do you need a place to stay? Homes opened. Schools absorbed new students. False names were assigned without paperwork. Children learned to answer to them immediately. Teachers never slipped. Shopkeepers never hesitated. No lists were written. The village understood something essential from the beginning. Paper could be seized. Words could not. By 1942, the pressure increased. The Vichy police arrived with orders. They demanded cooperation. They asked for names, for records, for compliance. The answers they received were calm. There are no Jews here. It was technically true,
because the village had erased the category altogether. There were students, there were guests, there were children. Nothing more. When searches were announced, warnings traveled faster than the police. Attics emptied, barns filled, forests provided cover. And when the danger passed, life resumed, visibly unchanged. This normality was not accidental. It was strategy. The SS were trained to crush resistance. They knew how to deal with weapons, with sabotage, with insurgents. What they did not know how to handle was a village where everyone lied, calmly, in exactly the same way. There was no leader whose execution would end it, no headquarters to raid, no signal to intercept. Every family was involved, every silence intentional. To punish everyone meant destroying the village itself. Even the occupiers hesitated. By early 1943, the stakes were clear. The village could no longer pretend this was temporary or accidental. What had begun as instinct had become commitment, and the authorities were about to respond.
By late 1942, the situation across France had changed. What had once been selective enforcement became systematic. The Vichy regime intensified its cooperation with Germany. Orders were no longer vague, they were explicit. Find the Jews, register them, deliver them. Across France, villages complied, some out of fear, some out of indifference, some because resistance seemed pointless. Le Chambon did not change its behavior. It changed its methods. Until this point, much of the village's help had been instinctive. A room offered, a meal shared, a child hidden. But as arrests increased, instinct was no longer enough. Survival now required structure. Without formal meetings, the village developed a system. Warnings traveled by word of mouth. Routes were memorized, not written. Shelters were rotated. No single person knew everything. Everyone knew enough. In February 1943, the authorities struck at the village's most visible figure. Pastor André Trocmé was arrested. Along with other community leaders, he was taken for interrogation. The message was clear. Cooperation would be rewarded, defiance would not. Trocmé was questioned repeatedly, asked to provide names, asked to identify those he had helped. He refused. He did not shout, he did not argue, he simply declined to participate. "We do not know what a Jew is," he said. "We know only human beings." After weeks of detention, Trocmé was released, not because he had complied, but because the authorities could not break the village by breaking one man. The arrests changed everything. From that moment on, Le Chambon understood that hiding was no longer enough. People had to disappear. Escape routes were expanded. Children were guided at night through forests and mountain paths, often in silence, often in winter. They carried nothing that could identify them, not even photographs. Many of those leading the children were villagers themselves, farmers, students, teachers. They were not trained, they learned by doing. Not every attempt succeeded. Some were caught, some were deported, some never returned. This story is often told as a miracle. It was not. It was a constant calculation of risk, and sometimes the risk was fatal. The village knew this, and it continued anyway. From the outside, Le Chambon appeared ordinary. No barricades, no sabotage, no visible defiance. That was the point. The SS were trained to detect resistance, weapons, explosives, codes. They were not trained to detect collective silence. There was no moment where the village rose up. There was only continuity. The same answers, the same routines, the same calm. By mid-1943, Le Chambon was no longer simply hiding people, it was sustaining them, and the scale of what the village had done was becoming impossible to ignore.
As the war continued, the number of people passing through Le Chambon grew, not by dozens, by hundreds, then by thousands. The village itself could not hold everyone, so the network expanded. Nearby farms, remote hamlets, isolated houses scattered across the plateau. Le Chambon became the center of something larger, a zone of refusal. Historians estimate that between 3,000 and 5,000 Jews were sheltered in and around Le Chambon-sur-Lignon. Many were children. Many survived only because their names were never written down. Classrooms, desks, children writing. Schools played a critical role. Children arrived with no documents, no proof of identity. They were enrolled anyway. Attendance records were rewritten, birth dates adjusted, family names altered. Teachers memorized the details. Mistakes were not an option. When inspectors arrived, lessons continued. Children answered when called. They were cited. They blended in. Normality was the shield. Le Chambon did not act entirely alone. Humanitarian organizations assisted quietly. Protestant aid groups, Jewish relief agencies. They helped move children south toward neutral borders. But the risk remained local. The village absorbed it. Given what the SS did elsewhere, one question remains: why was Le Chambon not destroyed? The answer is uncomfortable, because the village did not fit the SS model of resistance. There were no weapons caches, no sabotage operations, no firefights. There was nothing to retaliate against, visibly. To destroy the village would have required collective punishment without clear justification. It would have drawn attention. Even the occupiers calculated limits. Le Chambon remained quiet, and that quiet protected it. In 1944, Allied forces landed in Normandy. The occupation began to collapse. By 1945, the war in Europe was over. For many, survival could finally be spoken aloud. Those who had lived under false names reclaimed them. Some returned to families. Some had none left. Le Chambon did not celebrate itself. It returned to silence. For decades, little was said publicly about what had happened. The villagers did not see themselves as heroes. They believed they had done what anyone should have done. Eventually, the story reached Israel. Yad Vashem recognized Le Chambon-sur-Lignon as righteous among the nations, not individuals, the entire village. It remains unique. Le Chambon did not defeat the SS militarily. It did not stop deportations. It did not end the Holocaust. What it did was prove something smaller and far more dangerous: that total control depends on participation, and that refusal, quiet, collective refusal, can save lives. History often remembers generals, battles, victories, but sometimes resistance leaves no ruins, no monuments, only people who lived because someone chose to lie for them. This was Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, and this is how one village outwitted the SS.